His hand rested on her back as they greeted her parents and settled down on the breakfast table. They seemed clearly shocked and amused by how huge and beautiful his home was. Their eyes screamed how they were already making plans as to how they can get the most money out of Jungkook. Too bad. They didn't know their doom was near. Vine stayed quiet while her father kept talking about stupid things, trying to make himself look like an eligible businessman in front of Jungkook, while all he ever did was lose money in gambling. Jungkook didn't focus on even one of his words. His eyes stuck to her hand on her lap, tapping her fingers on her thigh in a way she was counting and waiting for the time for it to end. His eyes filled with such darkness it could destroy everyone around him. They were the reason behind her pain and panic attacks, and they were going to pay for it. I need to take this, Jungkook said and stood up. He hated leaving her there alone, but he couldn't miss a phone call about what he was working on for a year. He excused himself and left. Finally, her father shut down. When he talked again, his voice was nowhere the buttering tone from a moment ago. It was bitter and toxic. Father, so finally, you are where you deserved it. Couldn't even speak a word while all they did in front of us was talk back. He seems to be interested in what I say. Mother, looks like he taught you a good lesson overnight. She smirked and tossed the nuts in her mouth, chewing loudly. Father, tell him to give us some money or maybe get us shifted to a better home. He's rich. We are his in laws. He can do that much at least. Wine was clearly disgusted. Her whole life they lived off their daughter's money. Now they wanted her husband's money too. For the first time, all the credit goes to Jungkook. She talked back in front of them. Wine. I think it's better if you never come back here. If it was their home, Wine was more than sure she would have him beaten up and left like a trash in a corner by the time 3 seconds passed. They glared at her, and her mother leaned forward, getting offended. Mother, and who are you to stop us, girl? You're going to face the consequences of the nonsense you just spat. Jungkook, I suggest you to tone it down in front of my woman. He returned and stood behind her chair. Her hands were balled into fists in her lap, and it told him how much courage it took her to say that one sentence. Baby steps. At least she stepped up for herself. Mother, I think she misses her home. She'll settle up within a few days. I hope she was not much of a bother. Jungkook, you talk like she's a toy rather than a human. Reminds me, we have something to talk about. His voice was calm. He took a seat and grabbed a paper placed on the other corner of the table and started to read it. Jungkook. Agreement on the settlement of the issue. The other party pays up for the attempted betrayal and returns the amount in three size. Upon coming to terms with it, they initially accept to remain in the dungeon and pay off for their own sins for the rest of their lives. Mother, who are you talking about, son? Who betrayed you? Jungkook's expression remained professional, like he was simply stating an agreement to be dealt with, a business partner. Jungkook, the dungeon is full with past criminals who have went against me, which involves murderers, serial killers, psychopaths, and rapists. Furthermore, he was cut in between by her mother, who gasped and slammed her hands over the table, startling Hwan. Mother, Wyan, did you do anything? One night with him and you betrayed him already? Father, oh Lord, son, I'll teach her a lesson. He rounded the table and stepped in front of Wyan. Her heartbeat got high. That fear and panic was returning, but she didn't flinch, nor moved or showed any signs of fear. Once her father raised his hand, it was held by Jungkook. Wrong move. First, they cut him off in between, and then Jungkook twisted his arm behind his back and slammed him down against the table, right over the dishes. The plate beneath him broke, and its glasses cut deep in his skin. He tried to move, but Jungkook's one hand was enough to hold him down with ease. Jungkook, you, as much as breathe around my wife again, and I'll make sure you'll need help to move even a finger on your own. Jungkook, dare cut me off again. His deadly eyes shifted towards her mother, and who nodded desperately out of fear. Jungkook left him. Her father stood up with difficulty in severe pain, yet he did, the shock and fear now evident. Jungkook, go sit. He did, instantly getting back beside his wife. Jungkook gave no flying shits about agreement, law, or this whole talk. He was a man who preferred more of his ways, violence and torture. But he wanted his wife to see what kind of cowards she was scared of, the kind of people who only took out their power on the weaklings. Jungkook, you tried to snatch off my property with that zero brain of yours, and I thought I wouldn't find out. Did you think I'm your little fellow who is a bigger idiot than you? Mother, that son we found out later too. We didn't know who messed with the papers. I'm sure she did. She pointed at wine again and regretted immediately when she received the death glare from Jungkook. Jungkook, demanding a home from her. Was that your ghost? Wine held the hem of his coat slightly, and Jungkook needed a whole minute to process where he was. It was as if one touch from her and all of his violence was gone. Jungkook, You tortured my wife, left her with permanent signs of damage, and fed off her your whole life. Got her married to a man with your low intentions of smooching off her and her husband, and get her even further damaged. It's your time to pay for it. He knocked on the table twice, and three heavy men dressed up as saints barged in ready to take them away. Wine's mother instantly got on her knees and started crying and begging, while her father joined her as well. Wine couldn't believe her eyes. She was disgusted at her own parents. They treated her like they were the gods of power, and seeing this sight was a complete turn of tables. Mother, Wine, my dear, please forgive your mother. I gave you birth. I got you married to such a lovely husband. Please give your mother another chance. Father, yes, please. I'll do anything you say. I'll bring you gifts for my daughter. Forgive your father. He's such a bad man. Please, you are my only daughter. Wine, Jungkook. She turned towards her husband and her parents' eyes filled up with hope. Wine, I don't want their presence in my home. They disgust me. Can you get them away? Jungkook's eyes filled up with pride and he was going to command his men. Wine stood up, rounded the table, and stood in front of them. Wine, you're not my parents, and never call him your son again. I hope you pay for everything you did to me, and may death never finds you anytime soon. They screamed and cried, tried to touch her feet, but she stood there untouched, as they got dragged away on the floor, humiliated like dogs. Once they were gone, Wine fell back, yet a strong presence held her, her back against his chest, who wrapped his arms around her. Wyan, can you tell me what will happen to them? Jungkook, they will be taken to dungeon and live the rest of their lives with rapists and killers. They will be tortured and never killed, and that's what their life is going to be now. Was it twisted? Was she cruel? Was she not normal that she didn't feel any ounce of sympathy for her own parents? She felt so dead inside that nothing affected her anymore. Jungkook back hugged her and kissed her head. The warmth slowly kept inside of her again, slowly and gradually making her dead heart feel again. Jungkook, I have arranged you therapy sessions. It's going to help you move on from your past. I'll help you heal wine. I'll give you all the love you deserve. Her eyes teared up and she broke down. What did she do to deserve such treatment? From her own blood and from a man who was a stranger till a day ago. Jungkook let her cry, letting everything off her chest, and kept her in his arms. He was going to make sure all she had from now on. were beautiful dreams and life. Bonus upcoming.